If you haven't noticed yet, it's cold outside. Spoiler alert, it's actually getting even colder. And it was a frigid March this morning to honor Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Today, Denver celebrated a legacy while preparing for more work to come. The Colorado GOP endorses former President Donald Trump before any votes are even tallied, and while a legal effort to keep him out of office heads to the Supreme Court. And a group of college students leaves the cold of Colorado for a civics lesson in the cold of Iowa. Curl up, get cozy, you've got nowhere better to be than here on Next. Hope you're hunkered down at home because we're in for another night of bitter cold, and going anywhere is probably more trouble than it's worth right now. As of this evening, more than 1,000 flights have been canceled or delayed at DIA, and the roads are not looking much better. It's the worst for folks heading back from a holiday ski trip. Berthoud Pass is still shut down after an avalanche yesterday. Vail Pass not looking much better. Eastbound on Vail Pass still closed. Driving has gotten a lot better in parts of I-70, not looking too great right now at the Eisenhower Tunnel. Earlier today, though, you could hardly even see in front of you. Denver here is still operating its 24/7 severe weather shelters through at least tomorrow morning. The city says space is limited at traditional shelters, and beds even filled up last night at the emergency shelters at the former Doubletree and Best Western hotels off Quebec and I-70. Denver has opened up additional space in the McNichols building downtown, and a city spokesperson tells us they're prepared to open even more shelters if needed. So we've kept the kids waiting long enough. Can you say snow day? Dozens of schools and districts and everywhere is pretty much closed tomorrow, starting late or even full snow day. There's too many for us to even count and put on your screen right now. There's a full list, though, on 9news.com for everybody looking for those snow day news. So let's get right now to meteorologist Chris Bianchi. Chris, in a storm like this, though, we need to come up with some new terminology. You're thinking parts of the mountains could get a Jokic worth of snow, a full 83 inches.
I said that last week. So when we saw the forecast come in, Mark, I think you know this, that we were looking at some of the snowfall totals that are coming out for the computer models, and just the overall setup that we're going to have basically two or three different storms for about 5 or 6 days producing nonstop snow. This is usually a setup where we get a Jokic worth of snowfall, where somebody comes in with 83, 84 inches worth of weekly snowfall. Here are some of those 7-day snowfall total reports so far. Steamboat, 51 inches. So that's about, 4'3", like a fourth, fifth grader worth of snow. Up there in Steamboat, Monarch, Crested Butte, about 4 feet worth of snowfall. Wolf Creek, only 3 feet. 3 inches worth of snowfall. You get the idea. Just a ton of snow for us here in the high country, and we've still got a bit more to go for us in our southern mountains. The snow for the central and northern mountains mostly done at this point, but we'll get some more there midweek. But the snow, again, over and done with from this storm for us here across the mountains, but we're left behind with still some of those bitterly, dangerously cold temperatures. And we were talking about this at the start of the show a little bit here, where tonight might end up being the coldest air temperature out of this whole stretch. And I'll explain why in just a moment, but meantime, those wind chills, this is what we're seeing right now, minus 29 Lyman. But we've only got 16 hours to go. Not that I'm counting. 16 hours until we get above those sub-zero wind chills. So not that long to go. It's really just tonight. We're talking about that. These really bitterly cold temperatures, but wind chill values as low as minus 30 on the eastern plains. Frostbite can set in under 10 minutes. But tonight, this is the actual air temperature, not factoring the wind. Minus 16. You get those clear skies. Dangerously cold temperatures ahead for us for tonight. But tomorrow, 32 degrees. This is going to feel like South Beach compared to where we've been all weekend long. We did not get above 6 degrees officially at the airport. Here downtown, 7 or 8 degrees. We have not gotten above either of those numbers over the last few days, but tomorrow we get there. 7-day forecast, those mid-40s. Mark, it is going to feel wonderful by the middle of the week.
Well, not everything was frozen today. There's still news on a snow day. The Colorado GOP is not waiting for a primary to decide who to endorse. Over the weekend, a committee of party leaders voted to endorse former President Donald Trump's campaign 2 months before the primaries. Members of the GOP's State Central Committee held an online meeting this weekend to vote on whether to endorse Trump, despite party bylaws requiring party leadership to stay neutral until the primary. It passed with 65% of the vote. Colorado's GOP is the second in the United States to endorse Trump, after Republicans in Ohio endorsed him last month. It's probably unwelcome news to the other Republican candidates trying to get on Colorado's primary ballot. They had to pay $40,000 in non-refundable ballot access fees. They aren't getting that back. But whether Coloradans will be able to actually vote for Trump in the primaries is still up in the air. Colorado Supreme Court ruled Trump should be ineligible for office because of his role in the January 6th insurrection. Now the U.S. Supreme Court will have the final say. The justices will hear arguments next month, and a decision could come down before the state's primary election on March 5th. So regardless of what the Colorado Republican Party did last night, voters decide presidential primary winners. The voters do. And the First in the Nation caucus is tonight in Iowa. Several students from the University of Denver are there to see the caucuses in person. And as politics guy Marshall Zellender found out, shouldn't really admit they're from Colorado.
This is not the Eastern Plains, at least of Colorado. This is Iowa, where Republican presidential candidates are trying to perform in the caucuses better than the weather, above zero.
Wind chill of -16, I think, but I think like the base temperature is what, -2.
Yeah, a balmy -2.
Yeah.
DU political science professor Seth Maskett and a dozen students are in Iowa to observe the process to select the preferred Republican presidential candidate.
First day we went and we saw Asa Hutchinson, we saw Nikki Haley, we saw DeSantis, and we did Trump. And those were interesting, very distinct events.
DU senior Laura Dufresne and sophomore Dylan Lindsay are interacting with Iowans for their class, while sheepishly saying it's a class in Colorado.
Going up to people and mentioning that we're from the University of Denver in Denver, Colorado is at times difficult because Colorado, especially right now, is on the main stage with the 14th Amendment case.
Next month, the U.S. Supreme Court will hear arguments in the 14th Amendment case out of Colorado that disqualified Trump from the ballot for engaging in an insurrection. His name will be printed on Colorado's March 5th primary ballots, but the Supreme Court will decide if he's eligible for votes here and in other states. Dylan is not humble bragging he's from Colorado. He's gathering content for class.
I'm studying strategic communications and political science, so me and my partner decided to look into how events are advertised and how that really plays out in the demographics and the kind of people that you're attracting.
The kind of people that were caucusing is one reason Democrats have moved Iowa out of the first caucus spot in place of South Carolina.
Democrats had a lot of concerns that Iowa's electorate was not very representative of the rest of the Democratic Party, which I think was a legitimate point. Republicans have a little less of a concern about that.
When the class gets back, they'll have warm and fuzzy memories from Iowa, minus the warm part.
For me, it's connecting with people so that I can better understand my own ideology, better understand where they're coming from, and hopefully be able to bridge some of the gaps that we've been seeing and some of the division that we've been seeing in our political culture.
So if you're wondering, hey, when do we get to go into the cold and do that whole caucus thing? Colorado got rid of that process. In 2020, we had the presidential primary. Before that, it would have been caucuses just like that. But people's voices weren't being heard. You had the party insiders, Mark, and you had a lot of just the general public saying, hey, how come I don't have my voice heard? And that's what you see in Iowa. They love that in Iowa. Colorado didn't like that anymore, and that's why we switched to the presidential primary, which I know the Colorado Republican Party is like, maybe we shouldn't have the primary and just do it caucus style.
Exactly. We make light of the cold. It's even colder in Iowa than it is here, but it actually could have an impact on how many people come out to the caucuses, who gets elected or who gets the most number of votes in the caucuses, and who actually comes out of this.
Sure. But they love that. And I was talking with, Dylan was telling me, he was talking with people about how far they traveled to see like Donald Trump. He didn't go to all 99 counties like Ron DeSantis did. So if you were from one part of Iowa, you had to drive like an hour out of the way in the cold to go see him if you wanted to see him. And so like there's this feeling, and I was there 4 years ago, of like, this is something we're passionate about. We're the first. We're going to do it. I will say
it's a tradition.
The Democratic side, Joe Biden 4 years ago did not do great in Iowa.
Right.
Awful in New Hampshire. Went to South Carolina, which was third. Now it's going to be first for the Democrats next time. And look where it got.
They don't necessarily have a great track record of actually pitching.
You don't have to win Iowa to become the presidential nominee.
Exactly. Marshall, thank you. Before Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Day was a federal holiday, the fight to make it a state holiday here in Colorado continued for more than a decade. Every MLK Day for the past 40 years, thousands of people have marched in Denver's Parade to honor the life and legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Little snow and cold weather here in Denver wasn't going to stop that this year.
Thank you. Well, good morning, everybody.
In the fight for civil rights and equality, a winter storm is nothing.
Just because it's a little cold doesn't mean prejudice is going away.
Just because it's a little cold doesn't mean division is going away, so we're not going away either.
Coffee and hand warmers do little against temperatures in the negatives. But when the weather is this cold, it's also a reminder of the struggles to overcome.
We are carrying on his dream that all of us can live together like brothers and sisters.
For years, former First Lady of Denver and State Representative Wilma Webb fought to get Colorado to recognize MLK Day.
You can't stop us!
40 years later, the parade she started carries on.
I'm just saying that all of us have to carry the life and the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. forward in our actions of goodness.
Denver's parade is usually one of the largest in the country.
It's beautiful.
Canceling it today wasn't even an option.
They were up against death. We're just up against the weather. So I'm here to march with pride.
Omar Montgomery is the president of the Aurora branch of the NAACP. Today he marched with hundreds of others to honor the life and legacy of a hero.
We're here supporting each other. If someone falls, we're going to lift them up. Someone get cold, we're going to give them some hand warmers. But we're all going to get through it together.
Every January, Denver will celebrate Martin Luther King Jr. Rain, shine, or snow.
What do we need to do to come together, bring our arms together and say we want peace, we want to end poverty, and we want to make sure that we all come together and make the world a better place in 2024. That's what this is about.
It was a who's who of Colorado politicians at the event today. The cynic in me was wondering how long would Senators Bennett and Hickenlooper and Congressman Neguse and the mayors from Denver and Aurora, how long would they march in negative temperatures? Credit where credit is due. They were bundled up, marching all the way down Colfax. Hey, we want to say a quick thank you for all that you've done this week to support Coloradans navigating things like housing and jobs after incarceration. Here's a cold Kyle with an update on this week's Word of Thanks campaign.
Thanks for staying warm and cozy with Next on this frigid day, and thank you for what you did to boost the Re-Entry Initiative, which helps Coloradans who are leaving incarceration find new productive lives on the outside. You raised more than $10,000 to support their work, and that's not even counting all the folks who contributed through the Word of Thanks Fund with their recurring monthly donations. If you know of a nonprofit in Colorado that could use our help, email me next@9news.com.
Colorado's peaks got more snow than they maybe even deserve. That means avalanche warnings across the high country are starting up. And artists in Boulder County are carrying the legacy that Martin Luther King started and his message through stories and songs. Next. So after a slow start to the snow season here in Colorado, the mountains are absolutely getting hammered. We're still not quite back on track, but right now the state's snowpack is up to about 89% of average, where we should be. There is such thing as too much of a good thing, though. We're seeing the highest avalanche danger we've faced all winter right now. The Colorado Avalanche Information Center still has warnings or advisories posted for most of the high country right there, warning about going into the back country if you're going to do that. Berthoud Pass remains closed this afternoon after an avalanche on Saturday. You can see it buried some cars there. CDOT says it trapped 10 cars, but thankfully nobody was hurt. Want to check back in with Mr. Bianchi. Chris, for all of us who thought, wow, it's been really cold out there, no way it can get colder, you're here to tell us we're wrong. It's getting colder.
And I'm going to show you exactly why tonight might end up being our coldest day of this Arctic stretch. So you probably saw that we saw some of those clear skies a couple hours ago, right? That snow ended around 1, 2 o'clock here in town. Skies cleared pretty quickly afterwards. It's those clear skies overhead that's going to lead to probably tonight being our coldest day of this stretch. So let me explain this. Something called radiational cooling. Even today, we're only got up to 1 degree for us in Denver. We still built up some heat from the sun, but when you get clear skies and light winds, it allows that cold, dense air to sink. Plus, you throw in all that fresh snowpack, and it kind of insulates all that colder air. So think about cold air. It's heavy, it is dense, it wants to sink down, and when you've got clear skies and light winds, that allows it to efficiently do so. So that's why tonight will probably end up being our coldest night of the stretch. Right now, -5 and -9 in Greeley, and here's my forecast low for tonight. Woo! -16. Yeah. Good news is we clear things out tomorrow in terms of the cold air. We're going to be much, much better. for tomorrow during the day and tomorrow night. But HD Doppler still showing us a few flakes for us across the Rampart Range and a few spots in our southern mountains. Those will clear up in the next little while. And the winds, unfortunately, kind of pick back up for us in the foothills in Denver along and east of I-25. Winds will be light for tomorrow, but in the foothills, it'll be gusty through the morning. Tomorrow, high of 32. That's going to feel way better compared to where we've been. But again, that exceptionally cold start and that 7-day forecast, we're in the 40s for Wednesday and Thursday. Break out the shorts. Look at next weekend, 54 next Sunday. A nice little treat after this Arctic stretch.
I believe it is our sacred duty to try in every possible way.
Familiar messages taking on new forms as artists in Boulder gather to reflect on Dr. Martin Luther King's legacy and the fight that continues. Dr. Martin Luther King's words have been shared countless times, but today artists at Boulder's Modus Theater shared his messages through stories and songs of their own.
Dr. King says we are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny.
We have come because our eyes have seen through the superficial glory and glitter of our society and observed the coming of judgment.
So today's event is in commemoration for Dr. Martin Luther King. So we're going to have a few monologuists actually tell their stories or share pieces, poetry, and things of that nature. And we usually respond with a song.
Someday, some way, somehow, what is ailing us, this social disease, will take a bound.
Is it your sacred duty to try, to strive, to make yourself free over and over again?
For me, the event is a reminder of the work that we have to do. It's a reminder of the state that the world is still in right now. As we're speaking up, as we're fighting back, there's still new issues that we have to face that still ties into the same common theme.
And that's the bitter in your bones, and that's the fact that you can't stand to see our people on the throne in a place you call home.
You know, if we put our minds to it, there's strength in unity. Once we come together for a common cause and one mission, that there's strength and power in that.
Do not wait until you die and your possibilities for joy turn to ashes in the mouth of the earth to be someone who does live. I believe it is our sacred duty to try in every possible way. Thank you all so much.
Super cool there. Everybody interpreting in different ways. Your feedback and the most Colorado thing that we saw today is next. Thank you, Marissa. The most Colorado thing that we saw today combines two of the state's favorite January pastimes. Go get 'em, cowboy! Steamboat Springs hosted their 49th annual Cowboy Downhill over the weekend. And wow, who said skiing in jeans isn't Colorado? Whipping wind, crazy snowfall couldn't stop these pro cowboys and cowgirls from hitting the slopes. Of course, with the National Western Saw Show in town, Colorado's mountains getting a massive dumping over the past couple of days. What better way to celebrate our state's favorite things than putting them together for that? If you see something that's totally Colorado, send them our way to next@9news.com. Got some feedback from our very own Chris Bianchi as he was heading out of the studio today. He says tomorrow it's going to feel so balmy that it's going to feel like swimsuit weather. He even said that if it gets up to 32 degrees to freezing tomorrow, he's going to put a swimsuit on, jump in the snow, and go swimming there in all that snow we've gotten. We'll hold him to it. We'll see you next time. Stay warm.